and it's a little bit mundane. We come to church, it's the same thing we do every Sunday. We come, we sit in the same spot we sit every Sunday. And we come and we show up, and we are barely present through the beginning. If they didn't sing songs at the beginning, we wouldn't even be awake for most of it. Oh, by the way, our kids are dismissed to messy church. I always forget to do that. It's like the 17th Sunday in a row I forgot to do that. But if they didn't sing songs, open up the service, we'd stay asleep. If we didn't have the coffee, we'd be asleep. So it's always good this morning to have a Sunday morning that is a celebration. Anytime we have baptism, it is a celebration. It's a celebration of who God is. It's a celebration of what Christ did. It's a celebration of what Christ has done in the lives of those we baptize and of those who are here to watch the baptism. It's just a celebration. And so I am excited and grateful to be a part of that with you all here. Now for the month of February, we've been talking through some different words. And we've been kind of doing some defining or redefining of some words that are important in our faith. We talked about hope, we've talked about holiness, we've talked about some of these things that are the core concepts of the Christian faith this morning. And so this morning we're going to talk about resurrection. Because it is one of, if not the key concept of Christianity. Right? This idea that Jesus, and spoiler alerts if you guys have never been to an Easter service, Jesus was dead and is now alive. That's kind of the core of what we believe. If that wasn't true, there'd be no purpose in any of us being here. There'd be no purpose in having church. There'd be no purpose in singing because we're happy and because we're free, etc., etc. If Christ has not resurrected, then our faith is nothing. But we know that He has. But the concept of resurrection isn't just for Easter Sunday. It's not just something we save until about 6 weeks from today, and then we go, hey, remember Jesus rose from the dead, isn't that great? And we sing Christ the Lord is risen today, the one time a year we get to sing that song, and it's really exciting. The concept of resurrection in the life of a believer has to be an everyday thing. It has to be an essential part of who we are as people of faith. Otherwise, we've missed the point. We're in John 20 this morning, and John 20 says this: early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance. So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved. I don't know. When John in his gospel writes this, he says the disciple Jesus loved, he's talking about himself. This is what would happen if they had assigned my little brother to write a gospel. My little brother Tim had written a gospel. He would constantly refer to himself as the one Jesus loved. And every time I read that, I laugh. All right, we can get back to the Bible now. They said, they have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him. So Peter and the other disciple started for the tomb. Both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. Also, John saying he runs faster than Peter. He had to throw that in there. That is not essential to the text. John is like, hey, I want people 2,000 years from now to know that I am faster than Peter. Okay, we all know, John. There you go. He bent over and looked in the strips of linen lying there, but did not go in. Then Simon Peter came along behind him and went straight into the tomb. He saw the strips of linen lying there, as well as the cloth that had been wrapped around Jesus' head. The cloth was still lying in its place, separate from the linen. Finally, the other disciple, who had reached the tomb first, also went inside. He saw and believed. They still did not understand from Scripture that Jesus had to rise from the dead. Then the disciples went back to where they were staying. So at this point, the disciples see the tomb and it's empty. They're like, oh, the tomb is empty. Oh, what are we going to do? Mary Magdalene sees the tomb. The tomb is empty. What are we going to do? She looks at the circumstances and she sees what is. There is an empty tomb where Jesus was once laid. That's no bueno for them. Because their initial assumption here isn't, Jesus is risen from the dead. They didn't understand the prophecy. They didn't really know what was going on. They had no idea. They were flying by the seat of their pants throughout most of the time Jesus was with them anyway. They don't know what's going on. And so they're in this place where all they can see is the circumstances in front of them, and that's an empty tomb. But the empty tomb to them doesn't represent joy the way the empty tomb represents joy to you and me. We talk about the empty tomb and we're like, hallelujah, the empty tomb, it's good news. They don't know that yet. Mary stood outside this tomb crying. This is verse 11. As she wept, she bent over to look at the tomb and saw two angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and the other at the foot. They asked her, woman, why are you crying? They have taken my Lord away, she said, and I don't know where they have put him. At this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not realize that it was Jesus. He asked her, "Woman, why are you crying? Who is it you are looking for?" Thinking he was the gardener, she said, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will get him." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned toward him and cried out in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. And Jesus said, "Do not hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. Go instead to my brothers and tell them I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went to the disciples with the news, "I have seen the Lord," and told them that he had said these things to her. You see, for Mary, she sees Jesus at first and does not recognize him. She thinks he's the gardener. Underrated piece of comedy in the resurrection story. Usually we don't play it for comedy on Sunday mornings, but it's in there. She sees Jesus. She does not recognize him. And he looks at her and he says, "Mary." And that's all it takes. He doesn't have to say, "I am Jesus." He doesn't have to say, "Remember all the times we had together." He doesn't have to say, "Think about this story, that story, and the other." All he has to do is say her name, because he knows her and she knows his voice. You see, when we talk about resurrection here on Sunday morning, we're not just talking about Jesus was dead and was brought back to life. We're talking about that in the resurrection of Jesus Christ, death itself was conquered. The concept of death has died. We have no use for it anymore. And it's not just this idea of physical death. It's not just the idea of when we all get to heaven. Although, listen, I'm excited about heaven. Heaven's going to be great. But if your understanding of conquering death is just about the fact that we all get to go to heaven someday, you've got a piece, but you haven't quite got the whole thing yet. You see, for Mary, when they crucified Jesus, they crucified her hope. Mary had only experienced this new life after she had met Christ. Her life was nothing before she knew Jesus. And when she came to know Jesus, when she came to follow Jesus, it was the changing, pivotal moment of her very life. Everything was different after that. So when Jesus was crucified and died, her hope went with him. She was going there that Sunday just to go and visit the tomb, to mourn, to visit the deceased Jesus. She wasn't out spreading the gospel. She wasn't out doing good work. She wasn't out doing anything but just mourning. Mourning the dead Christ and mourning her hope that had died along with him. And so when Mary sees Jesus, right, and he looks at her and he says, "Mary." And in the moment she recognizes his voice, she sees him for who he is. Mary has experienced resurrection. Mary's hope is born again. It wasn't just the dead Jesus who came back to life. It was Mary Magdalene who came back to life in the moment she heard Jesus call her name. Amen. You see, when we talk about resurrection, it's not just about Jesus was dead and he's alive again. It's about hope was dead and is alive again. We're going to fast forward here to chapter 21 into one of my very favorite stories in the whole Bible. It's about fishing. Afterwards, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. That it happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, also known as Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and the other two disciples were together. "I'm going out to fish," Simon Peter told them, and they said, "We'll go with you." So they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. You see, to us, we read the story, we go, "Oh, the disciples went fishing, cool." But what were the disciples doing when Jesus came and found them? Many of them, they were out fishing. So Peter was doing when Jesus came and found him. So for Peter, who'd seen all these things with Jesus, seen all these miracles, known the risen Christ, identified him. He said, I'm the first person here, I'm going to say, you are the Messiah, you are the Christ. Jesus says to Peter, "On this rock I will build my church." It's Peter. When Jesus dies, so does Peter's sense of purpose. Peter's sense of destiny dies. And when Jesus is gone, what does Peter do? He goes right back to the boat. He doesn't know any other life. The sense of purpose that Christ has given him. The sense of destiny that Christ has given him, saying, I'm going to build my church on you. You are my rock. You are Peter. You are my beloved. It's gone away. It's died with Christ. And so what does he do? He just goes back to the boat. What do all these disciples do? Just go back to the boat. Their sense of purpose has died. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, "Friends, haven't you any fish?" "No," they answered. He said, "Throw your net on the right side of the boat and you will find some." When they did, they were unable to haul in the net because of the large number of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." As soon as Simon Peter heard him say, "It is the Lord," he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he had taken it off, and jumped into the water. The other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from shore, about 100 yards. When they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals there with some fish on it and some bread. You see, for Peter, his sense of purpose had died with Christ. He had built the last three and a half years of his life on following Christ, on saying, wherever you go, I will go. Whatever you're a part of, I'm a part of. I will fight for you. I will die for you, Jesus. They take Jesus away, and Peter denies him 3 times. He says, "I don't know who that guy is. I was never with that guy. I don't know him." So Peter has failed God. He has failed Christ, the one he said he never would. And so when Peter sees Jesus on the shore, there is a renewed sense of purpose for Peter. Peter says, if I can just get to Jesus, everything will be good again. If I can just get in the presence of Christ, everything will be good again. And he can't wait for the boat to get there. No. He dives out of the boat and he starts to swim. This happened on Survivor a couple years ago. They said, there's some immunity idols on the shore. And if you get to the immunity idols first, you can be safe at the first tribal council. For those of you who don't watch Survivor, that's a big deal. You don't want to go out at the first tribal council. That's embarrassing. You got to go home and tell your friends that you left your job for 6 weeks to be on a game show for 3 days. Not good. Don't want to do that. And so they're rowing, and everybody's rowing. It's the first people. You get out of the boat, you swim to the shore. And so, of course, there's always like these alpha male frat boy types that are on Survivor that are like more muscles than brains. And so the one guy, he's like, yeah, I'm going to do it. He gets up and jumps out of the boat. And you know what happens? The boat whizzes right past him. Because you know what's faster than one dude swimming? A boat with 9 other people rowing in it. This dude is so far behind what goes on. The boat gets to shore. The people get out of the boat, fish out the immunity idols, and then have to get back in the boat and go out and rescue him because he's floundering out in the water. Yeah, it's a good sign you're not going to win Survivor. And every time I read this story of Peter, I think of that. Because there's no way Peter chose the most efficient method of getting to Jesus. He saw him and he said, I got to get to Jesus because I know if I can get to Jesus, that my sense of purpose will be renewed. I will have a purpose. I'll have a reason to live again. I'll have a reason to be here if I can just get to Jesus. And so he does. He doesn't think about the consequences, and he doesn't think about what his friends are going to think, and he doesn't think about the most practical way to do it. He says, get me to Jesus. So Peter gets to Jesus. In verse 15, when they finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, he said. You know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my lambs. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. The third time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know all these things. You know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my sheep. Very truly I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted, but when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go. Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. And he said to him, follow me. You see, it wasn't just Peter's purpose and his destiny that had died. Peter had denied Christ 3 times. Peter had done the very thing that he swore he would never do, which was reject Christ. So it wasn't just the death of hope, and it wasn't just the death of purpose. It was the death of faith in a lot of ways. Peter had done the thing he promised he hadn't done. Peter had been shaken to his very core as a person. The Jesus that he had followed for years and years and years, he had rejected and denied, and then Jesus had died. And so when Jesus says to Peter, "Do you love me?" Peter says, "Of course." Jesus says, "Do you love me? Do you love me?" He says it 3 times, and that's on purpose. The 3 times that Peter denied Jesus were washed over and covered over by the 3 times that Jesus asked Peter, "Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me?" And at the end of the whole thing, Jesus says to him, "Follow me." It's so simple. Jesus doesn't say to Peter, "All right, you denied me 3 times, but it's okay because I'm back, I'm resurrected. Now here's what you got to do. We got a plan now. You're going to have to do some stuff for me." You know, it's sort of like those old 70s sitcoms where it's like, "Oh, I saved your life, and now you have to be my slave for the rest of the episode." And it's like, okay, and then something weird happens by the end of the episode. I watch a lot of 70s sitcoms growing up. It's that kind of stuff. And Jesus doesn't say to him, "All right, you can be my follower again, but you better never mess up again. You better walk the straight and narrow." Jesus doesn't say to him, "You can be my follower again, but you're going to have to be a junior follower for a while. You follow me from a distance. We got the disciples here, and then you're all the way out here. The tag-along follower. You're the distant follower." Jesus doesn't put him through the paces. Jesus doesn't punish him. Because the resurrection that was there for Jesus was there for Peter too. Amen. Church, the resurrection that was there for Jesus was there for Peter and is there for you this morning. Amen. You see, that's the whole gist of this. That's the idea behind what we're talking about when we talk about resurrection. It's not just Jesus is not in the tomb on Easter morning. It's about the fact that I was dead in my sin and I am alive again. It's not just about the fact that, Jesus now is risen from the dead and he ascends from heaven. It's about the fact that Peter had done the worst, he committed the worst sin he'd ever committed, done the one thing he said he'd never do. And Jesus says to him, "Follow me." Jesus says, "You're alive again. Come follow me. You are not dead to me. You still have a plan. You still have a purpose. You still have hope. Come and follow me." Life is hard. And we all go through stuff. We all go through circumstances that we didn't cause and can't change. You look at somebody like Mary Magdalene, had a difficult life, and Christ had saved her from that difficult life. She was following Christ, and then all of a sudden, through no fault of her own, Jesus is dead. She didn't have any control over that. She didn't make any decisions to say Jesus is dead, and now Mary Magdalene's hope is dead with him. She has no hope. She doesn't know what she's supposed to do. She doesn't know what she can do. That happens to all of us from time to time. We have circumstances in our life that leave us feeling dead and empty. And we wonder, and we say to ourselves, is there any hope for me and for my life? This morning, Christ looks at you and he reminds you, just like he reminded Mary, that he knows you by name. There is nothing about your life that is hidden from him. There is nothing about your life that is distant from him. And there is nothing that has ever happened to you, will ever happen to you, anything you have done or will ever done that will separate you from him. He looks at you and he calls you by name this morning. Maybe some of you are like Peter this morning. And you say, "I have lost my sense of destiny, my sense of purpose. I felt like at one time I was close to Christ, but now I don't even know that I have any reason to be here anymore. I don't even have any reason anymore." Jesus looks at you this morning and says the same purpose that you had the day I met you is the same purpose you have today. The same destiny you had the day I called you is the same destiny you have today. God hasn't changed. He never will. He doesn't do that. And so if God hasn't changed, then His love for you and the purpose that He is calling you to hasn't changed either. No matter where you've been. No matter what's happened to you. No matter what you've done. No matter how long of a time out you've taken between following Christ and today. Christ is ready to pick that up. Christ is ready to give you new life. Or maybe you're like Peter and you go, oh, I've done it. The worst thing I could ever imagine. The unforgivable. The thing that has separated me from God. I can't come home. Maybe you look at the sin in your life that's stacked up and you said, oh, when it started I was just, I'd made some mistakes and now I feel like I'm buried under the weight of my mistakes. That I am walled off from God because of the depth and the vastness of the mistakes that I have made. I'm too far. You look at your own life and you can see where you were and then you see where you are now. And you might as well be 1,000,000 miles away from where Christ is. I believe this morning that God says to you the same thing He said to Peter, which is simply, follow me. It does not matter where you have been. It does not matter where you have been. It does not matter where you are this morning. It does not matter what you have been fighting with, what you have been striving against. The resurrection of Christ is for you this morning. The new life of Christ is for you this morning. It's not about being punished for your past mistakes. It's not about making up for all the stuff you did. It's not about any of that. Jesus isn't making you fill out a big long application form. You don't have to submit 3 references. You don't have to go through a credit check. It's the only thing left here in America that you don't have to go through a credit check for. Jesus says to you this morning, will you follow me today?